Up you come. Yeah, you sit down.
Evening, Nada.
Evening.
Kevin, can you see Tom in a little room somewhere trying to get in?
Oh, I saw his name come up.
Oh, here he is.
He was there a second ago.
Yeah, he's here.
Well, it's 8 o'clock, so everybody who's coming is here. So I think we should start. So, welcome to the council meeting on the 28th of September.
29th.
29.
Sorry?
29th, Dave.
Oh, 29th, isn't it? Yeah. 28th is yesterday. Yeah. Are there any apologies?
I have apologies from councillors Nagra, Cheng, Ramuni and Green, possibly Councillor Green for lateness.
Thank you. Are there any declarations of interest?
Oh.
So we move on to the first.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor, can I just mention you didn't ask whether anyone wanted to speak at the town forum? We should ask
No, I
the
didn't.
attendees.
We
should ask the attendees if anyone wanted to speak at the town forum.
Is there anybody wanting to speak at the town forum? Take it. David Poppins. Oh.
No.
No, right. So the minutes of the council meeting held on the 23rd of June. Does anybody have any comment to make on the minutes?
No.
Or questions? Can I take that then that it's okay for me to go ahead and sign the minutes as a true record? Yes, thank you. I'll sign them afterwards offline. Minutes of the extraordinary council meeting on page 15. Again, has anybody any comments on the minutes or corrections? So I can go ahead and sign those as a true record of the meeting.
Can I just, on the agenda, for I tried to speak, but I think I was muted. On the agenda for item 3, I tried to speak. It says meeting held on 23rd of June. And then underneath it says to approve the minutes of the council meeting held on 4th of February.
Yeah, there's a typo. It should say the 23rd of June as well.
Okay, on page 5 of that, it's not quite an accurate reflection of the meeting because Councillor Baker said that there was money set aside to be commissioned for a survey, but that the town clerk would get in touch with me about the details of that. That was what had been said rather than just the bit about the town clerk.
So you want a correction? Where is that exactly? Wording?
Sorry, it's on page 5 in the bottom paragraph, because that was what was queried. That Councillor Baker had said that there was money and it was commissioned for a youth survey, and I would be sent details for that. And I asked a question about how much money there was for the survey, and at 14 minutes and 35 seconds on the YouTube recording, Councillor Baker said, "I don't know, but the town clerk will respond."
Okay. And you have you had a response?
Yes, I have, but I'll pick that up with the town clerk. But
Okay.
Right.
usually that's
Mr. Mayor, can I correct what Nada said? I didn't say it was commissioned. I said there was money available. That's why I couldn't answer her question, because it hadn't been commissioned. But I definitely said there is money available.
Thank you for the clarification. So are you requiring a correction of the minutes there?
yes, please. And it's all around between sort of 11.5 minutes and 14.5 minutes on the YouTube recording.
Sorry, can you clarify what needs to be amended?
The comments made from the meeting was that there was the assertion that there was money available and it had been commissioned. And I was
I said
querying
here
that
that
there was no
you've
commission.
stated that the survey had not been commissioned by the Community Youth Partnership.
No, I said that there was no money that had been allocated to that, and Councillor Baker had said he didn't know how much money that there was for the survey, because I asked how much money for the survey and who was commissioned to have this money, and he said, "I don't know, but the town clerk will respond," because that was the claims that were made before that I was querying. That was the point. So it's all there in the YouTube video from around 11.5 minutes to 14.5 minutes.
Yeah, but these are not verbatim minutes. We don't write down everything that's said. Are you just wanting the amount that would have been available if it had been commissioned? Is that what
I just want that part of it discussed, because there was a reason I asked that question about the amount of money, and because I was told that there was an amount of money that was set aside for this, and it was agreed and it was commissioned by the youth partnership, and I said I wasn't privy to that. So I picked that up and queried it and was told that the town clerk would get in touch with me with details of that. And as it happened, I was right, and that there was no money commissioned for it at all, and no one had been commissioned to receive this money to carry out the survey.
But I think that's what the minutes say. I think that is what the minutes say on page 5.
That's not my understanding of them.
There is, Mr. Mayor, there is a pot of £3,000 every year for the Community Youth Partnership to decide how they spend it. And that was the money that I was referring to. At no stage did I say a survey had been commissioned. So in order to move forward on this, can I ask Linda just to amend to say that Councillor Baker said that there was money available for it, which I'm sure Councillor Al-Sanjari would agree on that, and then check whether I actually said that it had been commissioned, because I knew it hadn't.
I'm happy with that. If that could be reviewed from the recordings, that would be great. Thank you.
Okay, are you happy, Linda? You've got enough information?
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, so that was going back to item 3 because your audio didn't work. Item 4, minutes of the extraordinary council meeting held on the 21st of July. Are there any observations or comments on that, or corrections? None? So take it then, you agree to the signing of the,
Can we have the clarification that was on page 16 on this agenda under item 7, so on page 15 it's item number 17, and then turn over page 16, so it's 17D.
right,
Below that, on the paragraph starting, following a request for an update on the effect of COVID. Can we have clarification about that question? I believe it's by Councillor Doyle, on whether members raised concerns about whether individual councillors might be personally liable to cover any debts that might not be met. If we have any more information on that.
I don't have a definitive answer to that, but I don't believe that they are. I've asked Wokingham Borough Council to let me know.
Okay, and it hasn't been noted with the objection of another councillor about Councillor Nagra not being allowed to ask questions, even though we were ahead of schedule and the meeting had closed at 9:38. So we still had over 22 minutes left of the meeting. So if that could be added on there, please, because that was an objection that was raised.
Mr. Mayor, I have concerns about that wording because it's an assumption that he was not allowed to speak. I'm sure, Mr. Mayor, you did not do that. So he didn't speak. That is not in dispute. But to jump to that conclusion that the mayor, because that's who controls this meeting, actually declined him to speak, I think is incorrect.
Sure, but the objection should be recorded nonetheless. I'm not saying that it has to be agreed by the meeting whether that happened, but a councillor raised an objection about, excuse me, about how equitable it was, with Councillor Nagra being allowed to speak, given the opportunity to speak, despite the fact that we finished. We had 22 minutes left of the meeting. I think that objection should be minuted. Thank you.
yes. Councillor Nagra, from my recollection, was attempting to speak for about the 10th time, and I stopped him because you're only allowed to speak once.
I understand that, Chair, but the objection was still cited by a councillor, and I think it should be minuted.
Okay. I don't object to it being minuted in that way, but I'm not quite sure how we get the right word in.
If it's recorded, I assume we can go back and review the recording and what was said. That's the benefit of Zoom meetings. Thank you.
Right. Thank you.
If that is being recorded, Mr. Mayor, then I think you have the right to put in the reasons why Councillor Nagra was not allowed to speak.
Yes. Yeah.
Mr. Mayor, was Councillor Nagra wanting to ask questions
I can't.
about item 17?
Who spoke? I didn't see anybody.
Councillor Swaddle.
Sorry.
Councillor Sanjaro, was it about item 17 that Councillor Nagra was wanting to ask questions? You said they were financial questions.
No, I didn't.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was asking you a question.
You said that I said he was asking questions about financial issues.
Well, I was asking you, what were the questions about?
I don't know. He wasn't allowed to ask them. he had his hand up and he wasn't given the opportunity to ask them, so I don't know.
Oh, okay, sorry.
I wanted the objection recorded about councillor saying how another councillor was prevented from, I think the words were he was completely ignored from asking the question. So that objection, I think, needs to be minuted.
Yes, but I think that it should also, if it's minuted, state that on attempting to ask or get the chairman's attention to ask further questions, he wasn't given an opportunity, as he had more than one occasion, the opportunity to speak. And it's a standing order of ours that you only get one bite of the cherry, effectively.
I don't object to anyone adding to them. I just wanted this point added. Thank you.
Linda, can we say an amendment that he was not allowed to speak, the chair ignored him because he had already spoken on that point?
Mr. Mayor, where would you put that? At the
I don't
beginning,
know.
the end? I did
Yeah.
ask the question of Councillor Al Sanjari where he actually was refused to speak. You can't just drop it in somewhere and we don't know. So on that basis, just put it at the end after 13.
We're here to agree the minutes, and the only thing I'm saying was that at the end of the meeting, towards the end of the meeting, another councillor had raised an objection about how Councillor Nagra wasn't allowed to speak at the meeting and was ignored when he wanted to ask questions. Everyone had seen that he'd had his hands up to ask questions. That's what I want to be added to the minutes, because I think that's an important inclusion into the minutes. So everything else, that if you want to add bits to that, but the point is, at the end of the meeting, that needed to be minuted.
So you agree with me, it goes right at the end after agenda item 13?
Yeah, so after agenda item 18, it was said on page 18 on our agenda, where it said meeting closed at 9:38, at the end of that, there should have been, I think, the objection from a councillor about how another councillor was prevented from speaking. Now, if anyone wants to add a clarification point in response to that, that's fine. But in terms of what happened in that meeting, that objection was raised.
Get at the end.
At the end.
End of the meeting. Would be my recommendation with your explanation.
Just because it was said, the objection was said at the end of the meeting.
Right.
Thank you. I asked you 3 times, but thank you for eventually telling me that.
I clarified it right at the beginning. I said at the end of the meeting this was said. Thank you.
Yes, Carol?
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wonder if you could give me the standing order that says members can only speak once. So I wouldn't say
I don't know where the
know.
standing order is on that. I'll ask Deborah.
Well, I think actually, Mr. Mayor, you're getting slightly mixed up with when it's a notice of motion.
Yes.
People can only speak once with the notice of motion, but that isn't necessarily the case for other parts of the meeting.
Right. Okay. Thanks for the clarification. Right. Are we finished with that? Yes. Right, then we move on to the minutes of the extraordinary council meeting held on the 25th of August, which is page 19. Are there any observations or comments?
No.
Or corrections?
Hello?
None?
Yes, I have.
Oh, sorry.
Councillor Chadwick has a hand up.
Yes, sorry, it's not a correction or anything. I just wondered,
at the very end of the minutes, point 25.5 on page 24, there was a query about a recent planning application for access to Addington School, which required the felling of trees. And I just wondered what happened about the trees. Because this is followed up in a planning committee meeting, but it doesn't say anything about the trees and in the planning committee meeting minutes.
Right.
It's followed up on page 49.
Sorry?
Sorry, it's followed up on page 49, but it at least I think that's the same application, but it doesn't mention the trees on page 49. So I just wondered, did they get felled?
I don't know. Does anybody know?
Mr. Mayor, can I can I suggest we cover that when we get to the planning and community committee?
Yes, good idea.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's that item. We're moving on to committee reports, the planning committee.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, you need to ask people to approve the minutes of that meeting.
Oh, yes. Can I have your approval for those minutes?
Yeah.
I can't count the hands at the moment. Anybody against? I don't think so. Okay.
Well, there's still hands up. Are the hands up? Are they against the minutes?
I know, load.
Where do you?
Okay,
on
that's
the,
agreed.
Sorry?
They're agreed.
Right, thank you. So can Councillor Wicks present the Planning and Community Service Committee minutes for the 14th of July? Is he here?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. May I ask you to receive the minutes of the Planning Community Committee, which was held on the 14th of July. They're on pages 25 to 33. Can you confirm you can hear me, please?
Yes, I can.
Oh, okay, thank you. Any questions? Okay, can I then move on, please, also to ask you to receive the minutes of the Planning and Community Committee held on the 11th of August, which is on pages 34 to 40.
Okay. Great.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor, can I, do you accept those minutes?
Yep.
Yeah. We'll move on to Councillor Bragg on page 41 for the...
Excuse me, can I just say, when you're voting on something, you need to put your virtual hands up. Otherwise, I can't, just waving your hand, I can't tell whether that's been agreed or not.
For some reason, I can't find the place to put my hand up. Anybody help?
It's on participants.
I can't see a hand.
Yeah, on participants.
Up at the bottom.
Where
Yeah.
it says more. Click on the participants list, Bill, and it comes up.
Yeah, I've got that.
Ah, yes.
Oh, yeah, right. Okay, fine. Yeah. Right, I shall use that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, that's agreed.
Okay,
Okay,
right. Well, can I present the minutes of the Leisure Services Committee held on the 1st of September 2020 and ask for people's approval to those minutes?
can we accept those minutes?
Sorry, Chairman, I wanted to raise a point on that and I raised my hand to do so.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't observe it.
Right, okay, no probs. May I speak?
Yes.
Thank you. On point 4, just around the corner, at the meeting, I did raise the need for numeric data from Jack so we can get a measure of their activities, number of nights they go out, number of children they interact with, maybe the number of children they refer, etc. And Sam Milligan replied that that information could be made available. And that's not mentioned in the minutes, and it's quite important to have metrics, to have numeric data to measure the effectiveness of the service. So I'd like that added to the minutes on number 4.
Well, be perfectly honest, Alex, I think that is in the minutes.
No,
on the second paragraph, right at the bottom, it says, in reply to a question about how the council could ensure that the work JAC was carrying out was providing value for money.
No.
Sam Milligan said that JAC was providing the services specified in the service level agreement.
No.
And that this could be itemised and reported on at future meetings.
No, Councillor Al-Sanjari raised an issue about the services. I specifically raised an issue of the need for numeric data, which we don't have currently. And I said examples could be the number of nights they go out, the number of children that they interact with, the number of children they refer to other authorities. I raised this issue and Sam Milligan replied that he could provide this information. This is clearly not in those minutes.
Yeah.
So
Linda,
can I ask these are added?
Linda, I am arranging a meeting to go and see Sam Milligan shortly. I will ask him for those figures when I see him.
Chairman, this was discussed at that meeting and it should be included in the minutes.
We're not asking for the results of the data.
I want that minuted because I did raise this issue.
Yeah, the question by Councillor Heap should be included in the minutes.
Could we amend the minutes to say this could and this data or this numerical data could be provided and reported on at future meetings?
No, they said it will be provided.
So are provided and numerical data will be reported to future meetings.
Thank you. Sounds good to me.
Suitable solution.
And there's one other query on point 6.
Linda, have you got the correction to the minutes there?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And on point 6, I just wondered, are we expecting the rest of the centre staff to return to work in October? Is that still our hope? The leisure centre staff, second paragraph, number 6.
I can perhaps help with that question. Most of the staff who are duty managers are back at work, and so are most of the part-time staff who cover the reception area. There are a couple of people who haven't come back, and some of the workers who are not employees technically, they aren't back because what they provided was they ran children's birthday parties, and we can't run children's birthday parties at the moment.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Is that everything?
Yep.
I'd made a request for greater publicity for the gym. Have I missed that?
You did. It's
Oh yeah, marketing.
It's at the end.
Yeah, I've seen it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Right, thank you. Next, we have 8th of September.
Mayor,
planning.
Mr. Mayor,
I'm sorry.
You've got Councillor Doyle, Soane, Gilder, and Alex has already done his. Waiting. They've all got their hands up. That's
Sorry, I
Councillor
didn't see
Doyle
that.
and Councillor Gilder.
I'll go next, shall I?
Yes, I
Right,
can't see your
right.
speak.
Point 9.
Oh,
I just
yeah.
want to correct an error on that page. At the meeting, the word in the very last paragraph on point 9, equality impact assessment service level agreement, that paragraph, it should say, or carry out this work after the new contract was awarded. I think Deborah Amanda, the town clerk, will remember that that was what was agreed at the meeting.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah? Right. It's a bit daft to do it afterwards, don't you think?
Sorry, after what? Sorry.
To do an equality impact assessment after you've awarded the contract.
Well, I think I explained at the meeting that we would ask for some information about equality issues and conduct when we tendered for the service level agreement, and that then after some months of operation we would carry out an equality impact assessment.
Yeah, so it is your intention to give the contract to a contractor, let them do it for 3 months and then do an equality impact assessment. Is that what you're telling us?
I think that's what was in the report, yes.
Right, okay. Well,
But
you
it
carry
would-
on like that. I think that makes a great deal of sense. I don't think. I mean,
Would be more
you're trying
useful.
to wind me up. You really are. Yeah, that's
No,
all you don't do the equality impact assessment after you've awarded the contract and then 3 months later just to see if they're doing the job as they ought to. You do the impact assessment before you award the contract.
Well, I'm not sure that's true or
Okay,
sensible,
well,
actually.
Well, you
I mean, we certainly would.
Mr. Mayor,
yeah,
that, you know, it's quite clear because it was a recorded vote. This topic was debated quite extensively, major participation by Councillor Doyle. A vote was taken, and that reflects the vote as here.
No, it doesn't. That's not true.
Excuse me, Councillor Doyle.
The word is wrong.
Excuse me, Councillor Doyle. I'm speaking.
Doyle, not Doyle.
Doyle. Councillor Doyle, then. That we shouldn't, as councillors, try to reopen debates that have already been voted, even though we might not agree with them. And you do make a good point, but they have been voted. You know, we have to be disciplined, and we need to move on.
I've raised a point of accuracy. The minutes do not record what was said on the evening. This isn't the word where it says when on the evening was after. Is that correct or not?
And that's what it says.
It doesn't. It says after. It says when, not after.
That an equality impact assessment be carried out after the appointment of a contractor to provide detached youth work in the town from 1st of April 2021. It's there in black and white,
Right.
Councillor Doyle. So please
Thank you.
try not, well, it's there. So this has been a wasted 5 minutes.
Not as far as I'm concerned.
I don't understand Councillor Doyle's point. We haven't got to that date to 1st of April 21, so it can only be for the future.
Oh, you make a great point, Dave. Well done.
Okay. Is there anything else in that? Do we accept those as minutes then? Yes. The next is planning meeting, the minutes of the planning meeting held on September the 8th.
Right, can I ask you to receive the minutes of the Planning Community Committee held on the 8th of September, and those are on pages 47 to 53.
You all accept them?
Question. Anne's got a hand up. Yeah, it's just going back to these trees. On page 49, planning application to 200,996 concerning Addington School. So to judge from those previous minutes, some trees are about to be felled, and I just wondered what happened to them and if anyone knows, because it doesn't say what happened to them here.
Does anybody have any information?
I wasn't at the meeting.
If I can just say, I did offer to speak to Early Town Council, and I did ring them and ask them about that, but I've not had a reply yet, I'm afraid.
What, sorry, from Early Town Council?
Yeah, yes.
Oh, okay, thank you. Okay, thank you.
Simply because they're part of the SULV
right.
working group.
Oh, sorry, do you know if the trees, do you think the trees could have been felled by now, or is that too early in whatever the plans are?
I don't think they have been.
Oh, right, okay, right.
I don't think they have.
Okay, Ian. Can we now accept those minutes?
Chairman, I've got my hand up to speak.
I can't see you. Where are you?
I'm right at the, well, I don't know where I am on your list.
No, that's the trouble. People keep moving around. Oh, I got you. Yes, Beth.
I've been contacted by a resident who actually remembers these trees being planted, and they are considerably older. Planning committee. I think she's told me they were 49, 50 years old, and in fact they're represented as being under 40 years old, and I think that affects the significance of the trees.
Thank you.
Okay.
Who else had their hand up? Can't see anybody. Carol? You're muted.
I know, it just worked out. I just feel we shouldn't just leave that there. These are trees that are very important for that area, and we're just saying, well, we don't know, and we don't, you know, what's going to happen, and if and but and everything else. I think it should actually be taken forward just to find out, to see what we can do, and maybe put it on the next planning agenda. I think Linda's going to.
Yes, excuse me. It was on the last planning agenda that these are the minutes for, and the committee said they would take no more, that there was no more action, or they would take no more action on that. It was on the agenda because it was raised at the last council meeting.
Oh, that's the one that we voted against. Clearly, the minutes don't reflect that, but okay, thank you.
The minutes do reflect that. To take no further action regarding the impact of the proposal on the SULV. That's what the committee said.
Right. That's a shame. Okay.
Happy? Go on. Satisfied. You're muted again. Carol, I didn't hear you.
Oh, I just sighed, basically.
Oh, right, fine.
I should have muted my sigh.
Right. Is there anybody else? Anything to say? Doesn't appear to be. Okay. Then do we accept those minutes? Strategy and resources now. On page 55, can I ask, was it Keith Baker?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to present the minutes of the Strategy and Resources Committee held on Tuesday, the 15th of September. I think they're all fairly straightforward, famous last words. I don't know whether anybody's got any questions or comments.
Doesn't appear to be any.
Yes, there is.
I put my hand up.
There's three names,
As indicated.
Councillor McCann, Brindley and Rowland.
Councillor McCann.
Thank you, Chair. Before I briefly go on to my point, can I just clarify, can you actually see who's putting their hands up or not? Are the officers helping you see what's on there? Because without being disrespectful, Keith Baker seems to be running most of this in order to support you. And I don't want you, because we're about to move into a rather complicated section of the agenda this evening. And I want to make it quite clear that you will need support and guidance through what's about to go on. So are you getting the support? Can you see everyone? And I don't want people to miss the opportunity to partake before I start my question. So I hope the answer to all that is yes, yes, and yes. Is it, Chair?
I can see the hands if they are put up, but they're often just waved in front of the camera.
Okay.
So
thank you. Can I suggest that the officers, after any vote, indicate that they put everybody's hand down, and then when they're voting for and against something, they indicate that all the hands are down, and those voting against something are then can participate, as we have said before. It will make it much clearer for members. Okay, moving on. Item number 5, resolved little 3, page 55. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, we ready?
Yeah.
Okay. Can the leader of the council confirm that at that meeting, members were told they would not receive the minutes, they would not receive the reports, and they could not attend the meeting, and that this information was not rejected by either the clerks or the officers of the council?
I cannot confirm that. I can confirm the question was asked by your leader and answered about who would be receiving the minutes of the urgency committee, and she was answered by the town clerk, quoting the relevant section of standing orders that actually dictates that the minutes of any urgency committee has to be distributed to all councillors, and it's here in this document, so everyone's had it. Okay. In terms of other people attending, again, your leader actually asked if there was substitutes possible, and my response was quite clear that at the moment the standing orders does not allow for that, but we do need to do quite a serious review of standing orders in the fairly not too distant future, and I advised Councillor Jewell, your leader, to submit that as a potential change to the standing order, and that the Standing Order and Financial Regulation Committee discuss and debate that. In terms of attendance to the urgency committee, nothing has changed in the standing orders from probably 40 years or whenever the standing orders were set up. I think The current standing orders were set up by Councillor Phil Challis, who I'm sure you know, Councillor McCann, or former councillor, should I say. And that does not provide for alternative for anybody to attend. I'm not saying whether it's right or wrong, but that is what our standing orders, that's our Bible. Deborah, I don't know if you want to add on to that particular point or any of the others, because we are guided by the town clerk.
The urgency committee is not a standing committee, so the same protocols that are there for standing committees, working parties and partnerships don't allow, so they allow for councillors to attend those meetings as long as they obviously let the chairman know about that, but that isn't allowed for with the urgency committee at the moment. The urgency committee could decide to invite people, but it doesn't have to.
So, just for the record, Keith Baker informed members present that nobody could attend the meeting, nobody would get the agenda for the meeting with the confirmation that the town clerk and its officers agreed that that was actually what was going to happen, and that was backed in standing orders. Could I have that put in the record that that's actually what's been agreed, what you lot have just said? Thank you.
I'm sorry, Councillor McCann. You obviously didn't listen to anything.
I listened very well, actually.
Excuse me, Councillor McCann, please do not be rude. And listen, I'll say exactly what I said last time. Your leader, Councillor Jewell, asked if who was going to be receiving the minutes. She was told by myself and the town clerk that every councillor would get the minutes, and that's in this document. So every councillor has got the minutes. So please do not accuse me of saying no one's going to get the minutes. All right.
No one's going to get the agenda, is what I'm talking about.
Secondly, right, your leader, Councillor Jewell, raised the issue about substitutes because she told us that she felt quite reasonably other people were more qualified to debate the issues. All right. She was told by the town clerk that substitutes were not allowed as per standing orders. All right. In terms of other people attending, I've never said anyone couldn't attend.
Yes, you did. You specifically told me I could not turn up and I wouldn't get an agenda.
Please
don't start lying on TV, mate. There's a video record of you doing that.
Mr. Mayor, can you mute Councillor McCann, please? Right. I have never ever said someone could not attend that meeting. What you're actually quoting is from the town clerk, who responded to a councillor saying they could not attend. I have never said that. I rely on the advice of the town clerk, and that's what she said. So please do not try and suggest I've said otherwise. Thank you.
Look at your own video on YouTube. You said exactly that, mate. We'll deal with the other stuff in a minute.
So are there any other questions and queries? Can I take Councillor Jewell, please?
I think Councillor Brinley and Councillor Rowland had their hands up first.
Okay, sorry about that. I saw your hand go up rather than...
Oh, well, there you are. I'm just waving.
Councillor Rowland.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to ask a question on item 6 on page 56 about use of the Oakwood Centre and who gets the use of it for free. Have we had any progress on that?
Deborah?
You're
You're
muted.
muted.
You're muted.
No, it's asked for me to provide that at the next meeting, so I'm sorry, I haven't done that work yet.
That's not a problem. Thanks, Deborah.
Who else was there?
Councillor Brinley?
Can't see her.
Sorry, no, I must
Oh.
have, you must have seen my hands up for the
It's
vote.
It is still up, so.
Is it?
Right.
Yeah,
Oh, I beg your pardon, I've taken it down. Sorry.
That's okay. Councillor Jewell.
Thank you. Just on a point of personal explanation, we're actually on the minutes of the S&R meeting, and you're talking about what I was told or what you said to me or what was explained to me by the town clerk. That all happened in the urgency committee. But actually it's quite useful because the minutes of the urgency committee are so sparse that you've now explained very nicely as to what went on. And I'm grateful to you for that, because now we've got some detail about some of the concerns I had about the attendance and who should be there and who shouldn't. I'm still very confused about Standing Order 8 being used to say that people can't attend. That's just talking about delegated powers, but I can discuss that with Deborah at a separate point. Thank you.
Not a problem, Councillor. I responded to a direct question from Councillor McCann, which was on the urgency committee. You're right, we haven't got to that yet. So I was actually responding to Councillor McCann. Councillor McCann.
No, I'm waiting for the next one. Don't worry.
Right. So I don't, is there any other questions or queries on the S&R minutes? Otherwise, I hand over to the Mayor.
Could I just let members know that Councillor Heat very kindly pointed out that some of the commentary against the amount spent in payments was not correct. We've got mixed up between pensions and NI and PAYE. And I've actually made a few more amendments. So the actual payments that will accompany the final minutes that will get signed have been updated properly with the correct information. And thank you, Councillor Heat, for that.
Thank you. We finished with the strategy and resources minutes. Okay. Councillor Rowland. You're muted, Beth.
Sorry, Dave. I thought I was voting to accept the minutes.
Oh, right.
I thought that's
Okay.
what you'd said.
I said, are we finished? But yeah, can we have a vote to accept the minutes?
That's agreed.
Okay, that's agreed. Let's get to the end of that then. Minutes of the urgency committee are the next item. And Councillor Baker, can you present the minutes of the urgency committee meeting?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can I present the minutes of the urgency committee from pages 79 to 85? They are quite brief, as Councillor Jewell has mentioned. Most of the time was spent on item 6 and 8 was most of the time on there. So if anybody's got any questions, I'm sure Councillor McCann's going to have quite a few questions. I'm ready to answer them if I can, or I'll pass them to the town clerk.
Okay. All right.
Okay, Councillor McCann.
Thank you. I would like to know why I wasn't sent a copy of this meeting. I'd like to know why I was told to S&R that I would not be allowed to attend the meeting, and the only information we would receive would be through the leader of the council, I would like to know under which standing order precludes members from attending any and all meetings. Urgency subcommittees are no more than a subcommittee. Item 5, agenda standing order 5, 6, 7, 10 and 8A do not preclude members. If the town clerk is advising the leader and other members that this is in fact the case, then the town clerk and the leader of the council need to review their understanding of those orders. And I would like an explanation as to why I was denied access to representing the people that I represent. Before we go into any details.
As leader, I take the lead from the town clerk, who is a professional in this matter and knows much more than I do, and most of us probably, on procedures and processes. So I've already said we need to review that at standing orders, which I think we need to do, but I'm going to hand over to the town clerk because it's the advice that the town clerk has given us that you're concerned about.
So my advice is that the urgency committee isn't a standing committee. So standing order 8, whatever it is, sorry, 8 does not, standing order 10 makes it clear that a councillor shall be entitled to attend any meeting of a standing committee, subcommittee or working party and may speak but not vote unless appointed in their own right as a member of that standing committee, subcommittee or working party. My view at the moment is that the urgency committee is not a standing committee. And that's why other members are not entitled to be at that meeting.
Can you please explain to me where in standing orders allows you to do that? You can feel you can interpret it that way.
Yeah,
where in standing
you're right.
orders does it say that an urgency subcommittee is not a normal committee of this council? Where does it say that?
It doesn't say that, but it is a slightly different body to standing committees, working parties and subcommittees. And that's the basis on which the meeting took place.
So what you're saying is you can decide what's not on the council's committee or subcommittees or anything else?
No, I'm saying that the urgency committee is not a standing committee, it's not a subcommittee, and it's not a working party or a partnership. It's a separate body. And that's how I've interpreted it in terms of attendance at it.
What rules apply to this urgency subcommittee that do not apply to every other committee, subcommittee, working party, working group, where this council's statutory primary function is that all members can attend all meetings at all times, receive full agendas, even your own protocol says.
The
protocols specifically say you can do everything that the standing orders do, and I've actually listed them 1 through 8 specifically say we have that right to the minutes, we have the right to the meeting, to attend the meeting, and we have the rights to actually attend these things. This is ridiculous. You deliberately, or perhaps it was accidentally, precluded members. It's ridiculous, absolutely shocking that members have been effectively barred from taking part in understanding the seriousness of this pandemic on the economics of this authority. It is absolutely shocking, and that the leader of the Conservative group is quite happy to plod along, barring members' access. If this is in fact the officer's interpretation of that rules, you want to change them quickly, because that is an outrageous position for members of this authority to be put in, that we will not be allowed access to any of this information.
And yet again, Councillor McCann, I take advice from the professionals. Obviously, you don't want to do that, So please do not try and bring me into your statements. So, you know, you keep doing this, you know, I take advice from the town clerk, all right? I don't make decisions on process, protocol, or whatever. You know, I take advice from the town clerk, as does every other committee chairman. And, you know, that's the way things work, unfortunately. They are the professionals. They are the ones who are paid to advise us, all right? Secondly, the urgency committee does not report to any other committee. All the working parties, the standing committees, all the three that you talk about do. The standing committees report to this full council. The working parties or subcommittees report to the standing committees that create them. The urgency committee doesn't. That's why I think the town clerk is saying is treated separately. So can I ask you to move on to your next question, please?
I still think it's disgraceful that effectively there are special rules for the urgency subcommittee where the council is deliberately attempting to hide things from members of this council and the public. I think it's absolutely shocking. My next point is, why was this agenda item made part 2? There is nothing in it of any confidential nature, personal nature. The only thing that I can reasonably work out is that there is some advice from officers on possible future incomes that could be a smidgen confidential, but actually they're estimates. And without talking about the figures, because I'm not going into part 2, these are estimates. These are not anything other than that. So why was that not made public in the public arena? And why does this council continue to try and hide the true scale of the problems that this authority is about to walk into through no fault of its own? I hasten to add, through no fault of its own, nor the officer's fault, nor members' fault. These are one of the things that happens. My concern is that we are being precluded and excluded. And if we are being excluded and precluded, how do we represent our community? It's absolutely shocking. Is anybody going to answer the question?
Could I just make a comment about that, Councillor McCann? The main reason for this information being provided to the members as a confidential item is because it's perfectly reasonable for the council to discuss a difficult financial situation without it becoming public immediately, because the council has to get itself in order to look at what it needs to do for the future. I think it's reasonable that councillors had the opportunity to talk about that in confidence and to come up with the plan that they did, which was to set up the urgency committee to review those figures and progress over the next few month at a monthly meeting.
The problem I have with that as an excuse or a reason, so my apologies, for a reason, is that it's already been at the full council, where the leader of the council announced that we could be in deficit to over £500,000. That is already in the public arena. It is public information. Everything backwards from there should be made public. There's no reasons why this information can't be made public. I'm not trying to hide anything. I'm not trying to cause trouble. But I feel that the public should have access to the same information that we get it, unless there's a proper confidential reason. And I don't see it.
I don't think we're going to resolve this. Councillor McCann, you disagree with the professionals' advice. I take the professional advice. So this is just a rerun of your comments on at the strategy and resources meeting. You made the same points there. I personally tend to go with the town clerk. You clearly don't and disagree with the town clerk. So we're not going to resolve this. Have you got any more questions, please, Councillor McCann?
On this subject, I'm okay for the minute.
Thank you.
Councillor Heap.
Yep.
I wasn't at the Strategy and Resources Committee meeting. Want to refer to Appendix B, which is shown as confidential. This information is produced every year. This year is an exceptional year, but I see no particular reason why this is confidential. The second point about that is that this has no notes, no assumptions. So from this information, you can't glean confidential information. You can't glean any changes in staffing, any changes in our relationship with suppliers, any reduction in services. So there's nothing on this sheet from which you can glean confidential information. So I simply don't see what the problem is. The second point is it doesn't have any notes. I can't see from this what assumptions have been made by officers. And for this to be a useful document, we need to know that, because if the reality changes from this plan, the assumptions that have been made by the officers, then we will know that this plan will need to be changed. But if we don't know, the assumptions made, we won't be in a position to do that. I don't know whether you've decided that for 3 of the next 6 months, we'll be in lockdown like we were in April. I don't know if you're assuming that things are going to get better. So, and if you did add those notes, then this would be confidential. But unfortunately, without those notes, without an explanation of how you came to these figures, this is of limited use to councillors. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Skegg.
Well, sorry, could I have some kind of reply to the point about the assumptions? We haven't got any assumptions here. We don't know the basis. When are we going to get that? We do need
that. Councillor Heap, I'll give you my view on that, and then obviously the town clerk. We didn't get into that level of detail. As I said in my introduction, we actually spent most of our time on the earmark reserves and precept consultation. What you're talking about will absolutely be a subject for future urgency committees. They're meeting every month, and clearly you're absolutely right. The assumptions and detail are what we need to have at those meetings. So they will be agenda items, and I thank you for raising it, because we will need input. The urgency committee will need input to the sorts of topics you want it to discuss going forward. So thank you for that, Councillor Heap. In terms of the confidentiality, I would be very concerned if I was an employee looking at these numbers to be worried that I might be made redundant. Similarly, if I'm a supplier looking at these numbers, I potentially could draw some false conclusions and withdraw their cooperation and what have you. So I can see I can see the town clerk's rationale for that. It is absolutely the primary concern is that we want to keep every single employee running with us for the future. I don't think anybody would be in dispute on that. I think it'd be universal. But Town Clerk, would you like to add any more?
No, and Actually, I recall at the Strategy and Resources meeting explaining to Councillor McCann some of the ways that the income we anticipated was being built up and why the figures were slightly different as they went through. Because the reality is most of the income we're going to get is going to be from the leisure centre, some from the Oakwood Centre, a little bit from Chapel and Coronation Hall. And that's the makeup of the income that we have and expect to have coming in. But I can provide that in more detail after talking to the Leisure Services Manager.
Okay, Councillor Heap, you satisfied?
Yes, but I'm a little bit concerned. It's the end of September, and we don't have this information yet. Obviously, sooner it comes, the better it will be. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, what you see there in the list of income from services, you've got actual income and then estimated income, and that's estimated on bookings that the Leisure Centre has and that the Oakwood Centre had, although that's gone down slightly. So there's really not a lot of places that are feeding into the income. But we are saving money in terms of expenditure because we haven't run as many things in this financial year.
Okay. Beth Rowland?
Thanks, Chairman. Yes, I did. I'd like to ask a question on the page 80 of the minutes, the precept consultation. How is this going to be done? What questions are going to be asked and who's going to carry it out?
Would you like me to answer that, Mr. Mayor? There is a consultation that is being put together. I am hoping to send it out to all members tomorrow for comment and any other information that might be helpful to us putting this together. We are hoping to be able to distribute that survey to all residents, to all households from the 8th of October. And I hope by the middle of November to have feedback from a significant number of residents on the level of the precept income for next year.
Thank you, Deborah.
Okay.
Because it gives all our residents a chance to express their opinion.
Right. Thank you. Councillor Skegg had his hand up before.
Sorry, I muted myself. Sorry, I just wanted to return to the structure of the urgency committee, just so I've got it in my head. I apologise, I'm obviously a relatively new councillor, and it's certainly the first time as a councillor in a national crisis. I think I understand there's some debate around the standing order structure, as Councillor McCann's gone some lengths to put across his point of view. The query I had really was around the structure of the urgency committee and the privacy element of it, and what the rationale behind that is. I think I recognise the value in a small committee to make quick decisions. I think, whereas there was lots of talk about standing orders, I wanted to understand not so much the technical ability to exclude councillors from attending even as observers, but what the rationale behind that was.
I think the rationale is because it's called the urgency committee and it's an urgent matter that it will be looking at. Now, usually that would be a one-off thing, perhaps a new tractor's needed and there's not time to take that to a meeting because the meeting isn't soon or something like that. But this is going to be monthly and perhaps might be more than monthly depending on what matters arise. And that's the reason why.
I think I recognise that, and I think that's dealt with the necessity of the urgency committee and the format that it forms. I suppose my question was more around why, if I was interested in the urgency committee, I couldn't at least observe what was going on. I think I understand why I wouldn't be invited to contribute. I think there's probably a debate there, but why I can't sit in the background and observe what's going on, I just couldn't see the argument there.
Well, I did say earlier that the urgency committee could invite people to that meeting if it chose to do so. But at the moment, standing orders don't allow for, I don't believe standing orders allow for members to just turn up to those meetings, even with the protocol.
Okay, I'm not totally sure I understand that, but thank you for answering the question regardless.
Yeah, okay, sorry.
Can I say, Councillor Skegg, you and others have raised an important issue, and we really do need to review the standing orders with respect to that. The concern I would have is having a meeting of all the chairs and the leaders of the opposition and the administration, plus 20 odd other councillors, even though they're in the background. But that would have to be discussed and debated for the future. So I don't know. I did ask Councillor Jewell to submit to the town clerk proposals for changing things. I'm not sure whether she's done that yet or not, because we'll go to the town clerk, not to me.
Okay. Councillor Jewell, you have your hand up.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. We're talking about the urgency committee, and I was asked at the urgency committee, I don't think I'm saying anything that was confidential, but I did say that maybe we ought to have a definition of urgent. I looked it up, and according to the dictionary, it means calling for immediate attention. Now, my issue is that if this urgency committee has already planned another meeting in a month's time, that to me doesn't suggest that it's urgent. That seems a total opposite of what the definition is. What I'd like to do is to propose a motion under Standing Order 13.9 that a financial monitoring subcommittee be appointed to monitor the council's financial situation in view of the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic and the subsequent loss or reduction in income streams. This committee should meet on a monthly basis, comprise 6 members and report to the S&R committee. The subcommittee's remit should be 1, to carry out a monthly review of income and expenditure, both actual and estimated, once the previous month is closed, and 2, to review earmarked reserves and other budget allocations that could be released to the general reserve this year or in 2021-22. I have a seconder for that, and if I'm allowed to share my screen, I can put it there so people can read what I'm proposing. Stunned silence.
Chairman, I'm the seconder if you'd like to know. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so
Mr. Mayor, since there's a technical problem, can I make a statement, or can I comment on this motion that's just been put forward?
Yes.
Basically, what Councillor Jewell has described is called the urgency committee. Even the terms of reference of the urgency committee, like the excuse me, item 1 is to carry out a monthly review of income and expenditure, both actual and estimated, once the previous month is closed. I think that's almost word for word what Councillor Jewell has just said. So we have a committee, or we have a mechanism. It was voted on at the SNR to do it. It was unanimously voted on to do it this way. So that included votes from 2 Liberal Democrats. So it was unanimous. We had the urgency committee. The terms of reference were voted on there. So I don't see how setting up yet another committee which is actually the same as the urgency committee, would actually work. And if it's going to report to anyone, it should report to full council, not to the strategy and resources. To quote Councillor McCann, this is an urgent matter. And if you look at the YouTube, you'll find that's what he said, you know, and I agree with him totally, 100%. You know, remember the time and the date that I've actually agreed with Councillor McCann. It is urgent and we definitely need to do it. So I, for one, will be voting against your motion.
Is there any other comment on the motion? If not, we proceed to the vote.
Chairman, can I speak? I'm the seconder. I should be asked to whether I want to speak. Yes, I'll speak now. The poor financial position is unfortunately not now urgent. It's ongoing, at least till March 2021, and unfortunately, probably longer than that. There is a clear need for councillors to monitor the financial situation on a regular and frequent basis, which is not possible with the normal meeting cycle. Now, this is not the same as the urgency committee, and I just fail to understand why something that's supposed to be urgent is now going to be discussed every month for months to come. That's not urgent. With 6 members, all the parties could make a contribution, which is appropriate as all of us are responsible for council finances. We will be held accountable, all of us will be held accountable by the residents of Woodley. And this would solve the problem you have of having an urgency committee where other members cannot attend. So no, it's not the same as an urgency committee. And I think this fulfills the requirements much better than the urgency committee can. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, there are a number of hands up, but I don't know whether they're left up or I can't. Oh, Councillor Doyle, I just made you out. Yes, Councillor Doyle.
Thank you very much, Chair. I just want to express myself in a way that perhaps may help Deborah understand how somebody new to all this crap feels about it, okay? Now, one of the questions that was raised earlier this evening was about liability. Are we as councillors in any way liable for any of the problems that the council gets into? Now, Deborah thinks that we're not liable, but she will confirm. This will be the second time I've asked this question. I need an answer to this question. My wife needs an answer to this question. And going on further from that, why am I asking all these things? This urgency thing is a way of discussing the council's problems without letting any other councillor be aware of what's being discussed. I don't see any other reason for it being done in the way that it's being done. And when you slap this word confidential across everything, you may be doing it in the best interests of the council. You may feel that's the case, but you're also gagging me as a councillor for the public of Woodley. Because whenever confidential gets put on it, it means that I can't talk to people about it. That's one of the principal reasons that you put confidential on there. And I feel that in the present circumstances, I have a responsibility to talk to the people in Woodley about the problems that we face. Now, you know, at the end of the day, it's a matter of, can we afford to cut the bloody grass or not? It's not like the problems that they're facing at Wokingham Borough. I appreciate that. But, you know, all along the line, you're saying to me, you don't know if I'm liable. You're talking about it behind my back without giving me the opportunity to hear what you're saying. Then you're putting confidential on everything so that I can't talk about it. So please, when I ask questions of you, and you know, please understand why I'm asking these questions, and that's why. So, you know, Councillor Baker said earlier that he wants to relook at all this. The reason he's saying that, because he knows what a bloody mess it all is. So I've had my say, and you know, there's many of you here have had this, been doing this for years and years and years. Anyone I meet who's saying, I'm going to stand for council, I'm going to tell them, don't bother. Don't bother doing it. It's not worth your trouble.
Okay. Bill Soane, you still waiting? You're still muted.
Sorry, you hand up by mistake. I think that was. Yeah.
You putting your
sorry,
hand
it's
out.
hand
Okay.
up by mistake.
Okay, thanks. Tom McCann.
Thank you, Chair. I think that this motion should be supported, especially because of the explanation given by the town clerk, especially given that the Conservative group are following the advice of the town clerk that standing orders do not apply to this urgency subcommittee. We should bring this information into a confidential but a standing order umbrellaed part of this authority. To fail to do so is to deliberately undermine our ability to represent our communities. We have other mechanisms available at our disposal as opposition, some of which you might find out in a couple of weeks' time, but it doesn't matter. What we're saying to you is either change the rules to allow members access to the urgency committee, because it's only the opinion, and I don't mean this disrespectfully, it is an opinion from the clerk, which means we can then turn and say, well, thank you very much, but actually we would like it to be inclusive. After all, it's only Zoom. It's hardly rocket science stuff. Should you fail to agree this, we have other mechanisms at our disposal using your current inadequate standing orders at our disposal to bring the information to the public arena. We don't want to have to go into an argument about X standing order. Does this apply? Doesn't that apply? This is an olive branch put out by the Lib Dems to say, bring this information under the normal standing orders, rules of debate, and protocols that this council is currently signed up to. Don't deliberately try to take it outside. It may be clever. I think it actually undermines your position. I would rather have me on your side in the tent, doing what people in the tent do outside the tent, without quoting Kennedy too much. So I would urge members to vote in favour of this. Should it fail, I urge you to reconsider the exclusion of members from the minutes, not the minutes, sorry, the agenda and the visual attendance at these meetings. I urge you strongly, don't go down the road of excluding us from what we feel is our public right to attend these things. I'm asking nicely, all right? I really don't want to go down the road of arguing aggressively or shouting or being all using your own rules against you. Because I'll give you a Keith Baker, if you want to know how good we are at messing about with the rules, go back to Wokingham Borough Council, talk to some of your senior officers and ask them why they now have a 150-page standing orders rule book. We'll just use it against you. We don't want to. We want to work with the ruling group to have a constructive debate on the future and the dangers that face this council. Thank you.
Thank you. Carol Jewell.
Yes, thank you. I'd like to speak to the motion. First of all, Keith is quite right about the remits. There was no point in reinventing the wheel, plus the fact that I think the urgency subcommittee's role is actually the right one. It's just with the wrong rules. And this is why my motion will actually allow that to be a proper committee, a standing committee, working party, I don't mind what it's called, but it will be a committee that has got standing orders related to it. It's a committee that will allow agendas to go out to members that can look to see what's going on. They might not want to take part, they might not understand what's going on, but at least they're being informed. And then for the minutes, as I mentioned previously, really don't help at all. They're not very full, so I was grateful for Keith for filling those up earlier. So I would strongly advise that we do this, and I think Thomas made a good point about it includes all of the political parties involved in this and some people that have got some good know-how. It's not just that they're chair of this or chair of that. They're actually people that will be interested in the financial side of things. At the urgency committee, I was, you've been told this by Keith about the standing orders. I said, okay, I can put forward a proposal. When are we likely to have a standing order working party? And the answer was no earlier than 6 weeks' time. Now, meanwhile, things are moving on and finance is not stopping along the way for us to change our standing orders or anything. It's really important that we now have a committee, a subcommittee that involves more people and is much, is much more open, and we can discuss things properly rather than the secret squirrels meetings that we have now. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. So, if you could, okay, Linda, do you have the proposal worded? Sorry, you're muted. You're muted.
Sorry, no, I couldn't write it all down. It was read out. It was too much of it. Read out
Carol,
quickly.
could you repeat the proposal?
Yeah, sure.
For
It's a notice. It's the motion without notice, which is why you wouldn't have anything. So I propose a motion to council under Standing Order 13.9 that a financial monitoring subcommittee be appointed to monitor the council's financial situation in view of the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic and the subsequent loss reduction in income streams. The committee should meet on a monthly basis, comprise 6 members, and report to the S&R committee. And then the remit is, as Keith said, exactly the same as urgency, the first 2 bullet points. If Mr. Chairman, if Keith would like to put in an amendment to that to change it reporting to full council, I'd be more than happy.
Okay. Linda?
No, I can't write it all down that quickly, but Carol can send it to me for the minutes. Is that
okay? I think we're all familiar with enough with it to conduct the vote.
If Mr. Chairman, if I just summarise it, we're making the urgency, what is the urgency at the moment, into a subcommittee called Financial Review Subcommittee. It should have 6 members and it has the same remit as the urgency committee. It's not rocket science. It's opening it up to members who need to know what's going on.
Okay. Can I have votes for that, please?
That's 5.
Right. Can I have?
Can all those hands go down then? All those.
Yeah, can you put your hands down, please?
Did you count mine?
I counted 5 that went up.
No, I don't think she did because you were quite late.
All right. Can you all, if you're voting for, can you put your hands up then, please?
Thank you.
The
Yeah.
virtual hands. Right,
7.
that's 7.
Okay. Right. Can you have the hands down now? Right. If you're voting against, will you now raise your hand?
Sorry, I've got to do it again. That's 12.
And Councillor McNaught has got his hand up on the screen, Linda.
Sorry?
Councillor McNaught has got his hand up on the screen.
Oh.
Sorry.
You can't do it, right.
Okay, that's
Plus Councillor McNaught.
13. Okay, that's 7 for, 13 against.
So the motion is defeated.
So, Mr. Mayor, we still have yet to vote on the minutes, I guess. We haven't done that yet.
Right, yes, thanks. So can we accept the minutes? Yeah, one. Oh, keep doing that wrong.
That's agreed.
Agreed, okay. Oh, lost my place now. Okay. The next item is a leader's statement. I believe Councillor Baker isn't going to make a leader's statement tonight.
That's correct. So we can get to the motion.
Yes. Number I. Item 9. So, got some numbers there. Right, all hands down. This is the motion that was fully documented in the notes that you've got, where we've on the minutes of the meeting, where Councillor Doyle proposed a motion, and it was seconded by Councillor Rowland, and then subsequently Councillor Baker proposed an amendment. It was received, but we didn't get around to voting on the amendment. So that's where we pick up. Are you all clear? So we move on to accept the vote.
Whoa, stop. Whoa, you can't just go bang straight on to a vote. You have to ask the members have any questions. Come on. These are your rules.
I was going to ask the questions, but
what?
Carol's got her hand up. I want to ask a question. There's other people out there.
Mr. Mayor, this
Yeah.
is a motion, so it's not for asking questions. It's for making speeches, because it's not a Q&A.
Yeah,
So
I know.
I think you mean speeches, Councillor McCann.
The point that we got to in the meeting, and we 6 months ago, was actually about to take the vote, but we ran out of time. According to our standing orders, we continue where we left off.
Sorry.
Can you please?
Point of order, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
It is my understanding that I have the final word on this motion. It was my motion. You can't vote without allowing me to speak.
I'm sorry, but you put forward a motion.
No, I'm allowed to respond to the counter motion that Councillor Baker put forward.
If you keep talking over the top of me, I can't give you my answer.
Well, you talk over the top of me.
You made your presentation. Councillor Baker was the last one to make a point, which was to propose an amendment. And it's on whether or not we accept the amendment to the motion that we've
Well, it's a pointless exercise. Why don't you just get on with it then? You know, it's come on, sheep, get in line.
So we've
Come on, make a complaint about me. Go on.
Carol has put her hand up, Chair. Carol has put her hand up, and I wish to speak before you go to the vote on what would be the amended motion, Chair. If that helps you.
Well, it won't be a vote on the amended motion because it's not been amended yet. It's to whether or not we amend it. Carol.
Yes, I just want to make it clear. I mean, a proposer of a motion has got the right to reply at the end of the debate, and also the seconder, which was Beth Rowland, reserved her right to speak later, and that still should be recognised. The problem is that Beth's connection has gone down, which is why we're seeing what looks like a Devon estuary rather than the desert island. So she won't be speaking, but I just want it to be recognised that that's what should be going on, that you should be giving the proposer and the seconder that right to reply and then move on from there.
To the amendment. Deborah, can I have a ruling on that? The procedure, I'm not clear. I think you're muted, Deborah. I can't hear you.
At the moment, you have the original motion that was proposed by Councillor Doyle and seconded by Councillor Rowland, as Councillor Jewell has said. And Councillor Doyle spoke to his proposer, to his motion.
Yes.
And then Councillor Baker, excuse me, put an amendment. So at the moment, the council is discussing the amendment.
Yes.
So if you want to invite people to speak either for or against the amendment.
Thank you.
Okay, right. We're clear now. So does anybody have anything they want to say about the amendment? Tom McCann?
Thank you, Chair. The trouble with Keith's amendment, it's actually too woolly. It's too, the whole point of Keith's amendment, I feel, is to actually negate the original motion, and it should never have been accepted as an amendment because it broadens it out so wide that you effectively put it into the leisure budget. It becomes a nothing. And by my interpretation, it should never have been accepted as a motion because it negates the primary motion. The fact that it has needs to be addressed in the future because we will be bringing forward stuff where if an amendment is made and it negates it, I expect the officers to advise the leaders and the chair that it negates the motion, therefore it shouldn't be included in the motion. I'm quite sure Keith and other members of the authority are aware of what that happens at the borough. It is not a new idea. You either vote for or against. And personally, I'm voting against it, not on the principle that it's a bad idea, that actually negates what we felt was actually an appropriate use for that money. The other thing I would like some advice on, and perhaps the town clerk could help with this, with her deep knowledge of standing orders. When members of a council say understanding orders, are they supposed to tell you which one, or are we just supposed to guess? Or will the officers actually instruct members what standing order actually applies to this if they ask? Because not all members have such a detailed knowledge of standing orders, whereas the chair just said understanding orders, when in fact he was wrong. Can I have my question answered?
Councillor Sanjari.
Sorry, Chair. Sorry, Chair. I asked a question in amongst my.
What was the question?
For God's sake. I asked the question that when members say understanding orders, do we have to, as in the borough, have to state which standing orders, or can we just wave that standing orders rule in the air and then we can all try and guess which one they're talking about, or let alone someone's interpretation of what that standing order may represent from the clerk?
Yes, members should say which standing order they are talking about.
Okay, well, that's very helpful. But then perhaps members, when they're actually suggesting standing orders, perhaps they should read it and quote it appropriately. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you.
Chairman, can I just point out we've got 15 minutes left, and I really do not want to get the situation, you know, it's not fair on Councillor Doyle to spin this out so that we have to postpone it. I do believe that we need to reach an end, and whilst it's very interesting, Councillor McCann, on a point of order, the time could have been used better.
Chair, I'd just like to make it clear that I would like this matter thoroughly explored before it's put to bed. If that means adding time after 10 o'clock, I'm more than happy to do it.
All right, I'll call upon Councillor Sanjari now.
Thank you. On the issue, the original motion spoke very much advocating for young people to have their space. I think most community groups in Woodley and in the borough have a designated space for them. Young people need advocates more than ever, especially with all the cuts that are happening, including the cuts to education. People are strapped for cash. They struggle to go to after school clubs, for private lessons and activity clubs, whether it's sport or music. So more than ever, there needs to be a space for young people. We need to advocate for them. With the amended motion, I've got to raise concerns that the wording give full regard to their appropriate use. You can still give regard to something and vote against it. And my concern is that it would just be paying lip service to, a proposal to have a space for young people, and the council can give it full regard and say, look, this was a motion, we have given it full regard, but actually there's no commitment at all to stand up for young people and make sure that they've got the facilities they absolutely deserve, that will see them through to the rest of their lives and give them a fighting chance of feeling part of the community. And really that's what it's about. If I remember a few years back, about 10 or so years ago, Woodley was voted one of the best places to raise a family. I would like to continue that not just for young people, not for just, young children, but also young people, and that we invest in our young people and make sure that this money that is just replacing what was already there. More importantly, we have lost something and we've got an opportunity to replace it with something that was already there. In very difficult times, Woodley should be the place to do that, and there's no reason why it can't be that, and there's no reason why the original motion can't pass, to advocate for young people and to show our absolute commitment that we feel that they deserve a safe space to feel part of the community, and where the community can support them in that and celebrate them in their good and bad times, because that's exactly the reality of young people.
Okay, thank you. Beth Rowland.
Thank you, Chairman. I was going to say exactly what Councillor Sanjari said. I couldn't have put it better, and I'd like to support her 1000% in what she said. Young people are going through a very difficult time now. They need all that we can do for them to make them into whole adults. And I'm sorry, the amendment negates the motion.
Okay, thank you. Harold Jewell?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, just briefly, much as what's just been said, it just makes the original motion much weaker and doesn't fit the bill. Basically, it would be interesting to have a comment about whether it does negate the motion, but I think we'll probably just move on at this point. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bragg?
Thank you, Chair. I would just like to highlight that the original motion actually states specifically, use the words specifically to provide a youth centre, which if we pass that motion, commits this council to providing a youth centre, which we do not have the money for. The only £84,000 came from the disposal of the Woodley community. I have been down there and I've spoken to the people in there. The children or the youngsters were not using the facility. They were going in there, but communicating out in the car park, and they still communicate out in the car park today. Very, very few of the youth went in there. The amendment gives the council flexibility into how we use that for the benefit of the youth. And I certainly continue in my stance that the amendment must be passed. Thank you.
The two hands that are still up are Councillor Doyle and Councillor McCann, but you've spoken already.
Sorry, Chair. I just assumed that the officers would automatically remove that. I'll do that right now.
Okay.
Thank you.
Could I just? My hand is still raised. It was raised to speak. This money that we're talking about was taken from physical facilities that were provided specifically as a youth centre. Now, Councillor Bragg, when did you nip down there and see these kids in the car park?
You've already had your turn, so you can't speak more than once.
Right, okay. I'll bear that in mind when I'm talking to the press about this.
Okay. Okay, so with that, there's nothing else to do apart from vote on the amendment.
Excuse me,
So,
Mr. Chairman, can I just say, Councillor Doyle hasn't spoken on the amendment. He spoke on the original motion, but he hasn't spoken on the amendment. So he can speak on the amendment.
oh, thank you. Well, you have another.
Thank you very much, Linda. I do appreciate you interjecting on my behalf. The problem with this amendment is it's purely and simply designed to quash my motion. It has no other purpose. It's saying, no, we're not going to let you use the money for these purposes. And we'll decide what the money's used for. The arrogance of this council is appalling. I've never known anything like it in my entire life. Now, this money came from a physical facility that was provided for young people. You're now putting it into a category that will allow us to piss it down the drain. Excuse my French, I'm sure you've heard it before. But that's all that's going to happen with this money if you pass this amendment to my motion. You should at least have the goodness to say, we'll put it in abeyance until we can provide something for young people that is solid and structured and gives them somewhere to go that is a place of safety. And I'm you know, Councillor Bragg, you've upset me enormously. I've lost all faith in you altogether. You know, because that place has been closed for 20 years. When did you go down there? When you were 80? And I've had my say. And councillors, you are not doing the right thing. You are putting this money into a category that you can later use it for anything. And that is not what the money is intended for. It's meant for solid structural use. That's the end of my say.
Thank you. With that, can we vote on the amendment? Those in favour of the amendment, modifying the proposal?
Councillor McNaught and Councillor Sartorell, I think, of waving their hands as well.
No, sorry, I pressed the.
Okay, sorry, but
Oh,
Councillor McNaught is.
No.
13-4.
So with Councillor McNaught,
With Councillor McNaught, that's 13.
right? Okay. So the amendment is carried.
Oh,
Can we vote against, please?
You want? We had 13 for one way. Do you want to get 10 the other way?
I think it's important that we register our votes and actively participate in this process.
Okay.
Named. We want the records of who voted for what. Named, please.
Well, that wasn't called for. I haven't taken.
But I think it's quite reasonable in these circumstances for me to jump in at the last minute. What with being the newbie who doesn't understand anything.
So we'll have to.
If you want a recorded vote, then you will
Yes,
come back
please.
to do the 4.
Yeah,
Yes,
we'll have to go again. Can I have a show of hands for those in favour of the amendment? And Councillor McNaught to that, add to that.
Yep.
Yep.
If you tell me when you've got them all, Linda. Oh.
Okay, I've got 14 this time.
Yeah.
Okay, I've got them all.
Okay, can you put your hands down, please? I now need a show of hands for those against amending the motion.
Okay, that's 7.
Yeah.
7 against.
7 against.
14
Okay.
for, 7 against.
Yeah. Okay.
Mr. Mayor, can I propose that we vote for an extension of the 30 minutes so that we can at least close off this motion? I'm sure I could find someone who will second that.
Now have a show of hands then to extend. The proposal is that we extend the meeting by 30 minutes.
Oh God, mine's gone.
I will when I get there.
Okay, that's agreed.
I'll second that if you need a seconder.
Hmm?
I'll second Keith's motion if you need a seconder, which I think you do.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, it's agreed. To extend the meeting is agreed.
The meeting will be extended for 30 minutes. So that takes us on to the substantive motion as modified by the amendment. So Can I have a show of hands in favour of the motion?
Sorry, Chair. Sorry, Chair. I was indicating to speak to that. I was trying to indicate I was to speak to this now, what is a new motion before us, because it's now been amended, and I'd like to speak to that. Is that allowed?
Deborah? I'm not sure.
Well, I'm sure the clerk will tell us.
Can somebody
Muted,
speak
Deborah.
again?
Sorry,
Muted, Deborah.
I believe it is.
It is allowed. Okay, Mr. McCann.
Yeah. Thank you. I'm sorry that the Conservative group felt that they had to undermine what was an honest attempt by non-Conservatives to show the youth within our communities that there is a chance sometime in the future, no matter how far away that may feel at the moment, that perhaps we could replace an asset that was lost. It may need to have been remodeled, it may have to have been redesigned, and the structures and mechanism for which clearly was falling short of the last facility that we were involved in. We could have learned those lessons for the next generation, but I feel that that opportunity has now been lost and undermined by the Conservative group, which is a shame. I'd like to ask the town clerk, what are the council's rules on motions that negate amendments to a motion that negate it? Do we have rules on this? Who makes the judgment? Where in the standing orders does it allow? Or do standing orders need to be amended so that the town clerk can say in their professional opinion, this motion negates it? Because I'm sure in the future, we'll come up with something that the Conservatives won't like, and they'll try and argue that it negates it there. So could you answer that before I go any further, please, Chair?
Deborah?
You're on mute. You're on mute.
On mute again.
I'm not sure if that negates it totally. I don't think it does. But yes, perhaps we should look more carefully at that aspect of the standing orders. And I will do that.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm sure the ruling group find it very frustrating that we as Liberal Democrats, or indeed the opposition, choose to challenge, prod, poke, criticise what the current ruling group do, but that is our statutory duty. It is a legal requirement that we scrutinise and hold the ruling group to account. You may find it frustrating. You may find it irritating. The officers will occasionally feel uncomfortable that we are putting them in a position being squeezed from the left and the right, but that goes with the territory. It is a shame that this has happened. I will be abstaining from this, not because I agree with Keith's sentiment or indeed the ruling group, as I think it was an opportunity lost. It takes away future opportunities. So I will be abstaining because no matter how small of a fraction, the chances are that this might be used to help the people who we originally hoped it would. I don't want to vote against that, however small. So I'm going to be abstaining.
Okay, thank you. Right, shall we move to the vote?
Can I speak, please?
Yes.
Thank you. In this amended motion, can I remind you all about what's at stake here with our young people? You are talking about people, young people, who haven't got a safe home, but have fallen through the net, where some of them are in care, some of them need to be in care. And instead of having a safe place that the community has invested in them, they are going to homes that aren't safe, where they are plied with drugs and alcohol and oftentimes abused, with then no one to speak to, with very few services that can catch them when they are completely rock bottom. And the problems that leads for their future, it can destroy lives. It's in particular very affecting for young women who are incredibly vulnerable to these things. And just because we don't see them on our street corners anymore, we should be completely terrified of that, because they are somewhere else. If they're not hanging about on street corners or in parks like they used to, as it was in the Jack report, then they are somewhere else. The world hasn't got safer for them. What's happened is that services have been cut for them. And the cost to education mean that we don't have, the cuts to education mean that we don't have the support staff that are there even in schools to support these young people. You've got people who are young boys who are getting involved in gangs and drugs because, again, they haven't got a safe space to talk to. Our youth workers are lifesavers, and having a safe space that they can just go to when it's cold, this country isn't particularly warm, they can't hang about in parks. Going to these spaces was a lifesaver for a lot of young people. It's changed lives. I know as a secondary school teacher, and that's why this means so much to me, because I see it firsthand. I see the difference between a child who's supported and a child who isn't, and a young person who's supported and a young person isn't. These services, this is their right, and it was their entitlement. And we have all paid into these services that were then cut. So having a full regard to their appropriate use means nothing to them. It does not give the young people a safe space to go. You can give that full regard and decide at a later stage for political point scoring that you don't want this to happen. Or it costs too much money. It costs too much money to save young people from being sexually abused, physically abused, neglected. It costs too much money to save our young people from getting involved in crime and drugs and homelessness at the age of 18 and 19 and onwards, with no safety net to catch them. That costs too much money. And then we worry about crime. And then we ask the Police and Crime Commissioner if they can come in to speak to us about resolving those issues. All of them could have been helped so much by having a designated youth service that, I remind you, was their entitlement and their right that they had before. We are just pushing more problems down the line by saying that we haven't got the money for this. We all do this voluntarily, giving up our time voluntarily to do this. This isn't some hobby or political game playing. This is real kids on the streets. And like I said, the saddest thing is when you don't see them on the streets because they are somewhere else far more dangerous than the street. And we have potentially taken away the opportunity to make a real change and have a massive impact on the lives of the young people in our care, in our community, that we have been elected by the adults to represent, but they haven't got a vote. And we were meant to be a voice for them. And what have we done with that? Voted on political lines for what? There should be a sense of duty and responsibility and conscience in this. That's all I've got to say. I'm genuinely angry and ashamed of what's happened.
Okay, Councillor Swaddle. Alison?
Not there.
Chair.
Yes, thanks.
Chair, sorry, Chair.
I'm-
Sorry. Point of order, Chair.
Mr. Mayor.
Point of order, Chair.
Yes.
Point of order. Could I just remind members who have their microphones on, not on, that some of us can actually lip read what they're saying. Okay. In particular, can we just remind members that some of us can lip read and we can hear what they're saying without actually having any noise. Just please bear that in mind when we're sitting at home, because the public will actually see this as well. And that's all, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you for that reminder.
Can I
Mr.
just-
Mayor, I didn't. You called on me to speak next. I
Yeah.
didn't have my hand up, but I would think I do think that's a refreshing point that Councillor McCann just made. That
Yeah.
we should all be aware that the public, you know, are hearing the tones of voice and the language that we're using, and I just think that all councillors should be speaking respectfully, particularly to you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Right. The only hand that's up now is Councillor Doyle.
Yeah, it's me again. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to express obvious disappointment that you haven't accepted my motion. And I have to say that if I express myself, it's the passion I feel about this whole thing that is really being expressed. And I have to remember that all the people that voted against this motion belong to the party that reduced the spending on youth facilities in Wokingham Borough from an annual spend exceeding £950,000 a year down to less than £50,000 a year now. So it really doesn't surprise me very much that all the Tory hands went up against my motion, because they don't want to spend money on our young people. It's not in their policy. Thank you.
Thank you. Where have we got to?
I think the vote, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, the vote.
Could you just remind us what we're voting on, please?
Yeah, the amended motion is the council notes that the recent decision, the paragraph, if you've got it written down, the second one amend is the wording. So the effective thing, the council resolves that any new or enhanced existing assets acquired using these funds will give regard to their appropriate use by the youth of Woodley for the money that's come from the facility. So is everybody clear what motion we're in? Okay, can we proceed to the vote then? There are the hands going up, right?
I'm assuming this is a recorded vote.
Sorry, Chair, was that a vote for or against?
Sorry,
is that a vote against it? Yeah.
For the motion. For the amended motion.
Okay.
Linda, let me know when you've got the names, Cal.
Is there anybody waving a hand that's not on that list?
Are you voting, Councillor McNaught?
Yes, I am.
Yeah, that's
it does not work. My raising hand does not work.
No.
Sorry.
Okay.
Okay, that's 14-4.
Right, thank you. Do we need a vote?
Yeah, it's a recorded vote, so we need to know who's voting against.
Against. So can you put your hands down unless you're voting against?
Can we have the votes against, please?
Votes against?
Mr. Chairman, I think you'll find nobody's voting against. Maybe you ought to ask for abstentions.
Okay.
Yeah, okay, that's a good idea. We'll have abstentions. Those who are abstaining. I'll make it 6.
Yep, that's 6.
Okay. So the motion's carried.
Yeah.
Right. We've got 15 minutes to speak about the item 10, the community infrastructure levy.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes?
could I make a comment on this item, please?
Yes, I was going to ask you to.
Okay, thank you.
Some explanation.
Basically, what I'm going to say now, I hope everyone will agree with me, so we could make this quite quick. I totally and utterly disagree with giving away our earned SIL money for schemes that are nowhere near us, particularly when some of the parish councils in those areas have infinitely more SIL money than we do because they've taken the houses, and they can afford to provide more. So from my perspective, and I hope my group will agree, that we should effectively disagree or vote down allocating 15,000 of our SIL funds to the flood management scheme south of the M4, because there is no benefit to us whatsoever. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Keith.
Chair, I second.
Who said that?
Councillor Brinley.
Oh, thank you. Yes, okay. Right, does anybody have anything to say on that?
Councillor Jewell wishes to speak.
Thank
Yes.
you. Just to say that I agree with Keith. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Tom McCann?
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. So I'll just lower my hand on this one.
All right,
Okay.
thanks.
For the record, I agree with Keith, and however irking it may be for me, I do. It's just one of them things. It makes sense. I understand that. The unfortunate thing about flood management is if you don't fix it upstream, guess what happens downstream?
Yeah.
So while the spirit of what Keith is suggesting is correct, of course, and the fact that Woking Borough Council has had £8.5 million from the government COVID funding, and as far as I'm aware, has refused to fund anything that the town council has asked for. Over the last 20 years, between 106 money and SIL money, it makes getting blood out of a stone seem like quite an easy challenge. The fact that the borough now wants money from us to help do work that it really should have a statutory requirement to fulfill anyway seems a bit bizarre. But my question is a little bit more specific. What specific management schemes south of the M4 was this looking to contribute towards, and would the withdrawal of this funding have a fundamental consequence, and would it have a fundamental bearing on whether or not that project or projects would progress? Either you know, maybe the town clerk knows, maybe the leader of the council knows, or is this just a slush fund that eventually Woking Borough gets around to using money on behalf of Conservatives and conservative rural areas to stop their fields from flooding? That's me.
I can confirm, Councillor McCann, that I know nothing. I have no information here. But if they've asked for 15,000 from 17 parish and town councils, you can do the maths. That's way over 100,000. South of the M4, just for your own information, is not a hotbed of conservatism. It's actually a hotbed of independent councillors already. So, but no, I understand your the concept of coming down the river, but it's just come out of the blue, and I don't know whether Deborah knows any more details.
No, I'm afraid I don't. Sorry.
Okay. So we should have a vote on whether to allow the money or not. So the proposal is that we allocate £15,000 of still money to for Wokinham's use. All those in favour?
No, you got it the wrong way round, Mr. Mayor. It's that we don't allocate.
If you want, yeah, we don't have the proposal.
That's the proposal, that we do not allocate the
Yes.
15,000.
Yeah. Okay, we'll vote for those for the concept that we do not allocate the money to Wokingham. Those in favour of not allocating?
That's agreed.
Thank you. Right. Turn over the page. Outside bodies. Find the page in here. So it's it's proposed to the current representatives on the following outside bodies remain in place for the remainder of 2021 municipal year. Members are asked to approve these representatives. That is Anne Chadwick for the Sanford Farm Liaison Group. Can I have votes to continue to appoint Anne for the rest of the year?
Oops, get my hand up.
Okay, that's agreed.
Right. Okay. Second one is Wokingham Borough Council Climate Emergency Working Group. Vote. For one place on that. It would be allocated to Keith Baker.
Mr. Mayor, Councillor Jewell is trying to attract your attention.
Thank you. Councillor Jewell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There's no point in opposing it because I shall lose the vote. But what I would ask is that this is an outside body that we haven't yet received a report on. And I think there's been 2 meetings, again, other secret squirrels where things are decided and not passed on. Partly this was because the working party wasn't held, a meeting wasn't held for 10 months since the emergency was declared. I think I would strongly request that the member that takes this place actually does report back either to the climate emergency, but I think more importantly to the parent committee plans, because if we don't have any working parties in the near future, we still won't know what's going on. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, can I profusely apologise for not providing a report? I feel suitably chastised, and I will make sure that I will do it on a regular basis, not only to the Planning Community Committee, but to your cat and to the Climate Emergency group, the working party. So I do apologise to you and the council.
Okay, thank you.
So can we vote to agree that?
Yes, can I have your votes in favour of continuing the appointment? Oh, it's gone off.
Okay, that's agreed.
That's agreed, right. Item B, the correspondence received from Wokingham United Charities at Appendix 11B to consider appointing a representative. Do we wish to appoint a representative? So can I have a
Councillor Jewell waving her hand.
Yep.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, could I nominate Beth Rowland for that slot? And just to make a point that John McNaught's electronic hand has just appeared, so I think it is working again if he wants to use it.
Yeah, it's okay. Sorry about that, Carol.
And I think I probably got a seconder for Beth as well.
I'm prepared to second Beth as well.
Okay. Can I have a show of hands then to appoint Beth?
Okay, that's agreed.
It's agreed, okay. Right, now we go on to page 88 to receive reports from town council representatives. Many of them are written reports. So are there any oral reports?
Just lost my video.
Oh, yes, there you have.
Yeah, I mean, basically, the Citizens Advice Bureau is in. It's a little bit out of date because it was for the June 2020 meeting of the Town Council. I'd just like to add that the number of cases helped now is over 4,000. Our next meeting is not until the 8th of October, or 21st of October. So I will give a full report at the next council meeting.
Thank you, David Bragg. Any others? Apart from the written ones?
Councillor McCann has his hand up.
Well, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Bearing in mind the possible catastrophic consequences of the COVID and the lockdown to our communities, economic catastrophic outcomes, does the Citizens Advice Bureau feel that their current budget will be adequate to cope with what would inevitably seem a doubling and probably even a tripling of the services required without extending meeting times from 4 to 6 to 8 to 12 weeks? And if they don't feel it's adequate, how does Citizens Advice intend to come back to communities and organisations which currently do contribute towards their funding before it gets too late? So do you see what I'm trying to get to? In other words, do you think you can cope with your budget, with the people, with the challenges, and et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah, let me answer that to the best of my ability, Councillor McCann. First and foremost, the one front door system has now been extended with Wokingham Borough Council to the 31st of March next year. So that actually gives access to people as a point of reference to be able to contact Citizens Advice and be put in touch with whatever voluntary group they need, whether it be food parcels, help with cleaning, help with care. They can go on and do that. As part of that, we're issuing telephones around the Wokingham Borough, which have a direct link to the Citizens Advice Bureau. I've already asked for one, which is going in the library, and I've asked for a second that will go in the Oakwood Centre. So if someone has an urgent thing, they can come in, pick up the phone and get straight through to, I don't say an advisor, but a trauma situation, so that details can be taken down and assistance given. We've already agreed to let rooms in the Oakwood Centre out to Citizens Advice to be able to do one-to-one with social distancing where necessary. There are 2 dedicated advisors to giving that front door service to people. In addition, are not only getting funding now from WBC, but we are getting it from Wokingham United Charities. There's a couple of cases there. We've had a little bit of lottery funding. So Citizens Advice, yes, there will always be a tight budget to work from, but we are in a much better situation than we were 12 months ago. I hope that clarifies the situation for you.
It does indeed, but if you could keep us informed, because obviously we're running into the budget session in the coming months.
Most certainly I will.
If that would be very helpful, both for us as councillors and indeed as our community, to know that we as a town are actively supporting the work that you do and the unexpected demand for the use of such services. Thank you very much.
I mean, certainly we are now in a situation where our trustee meetings, whereas they were every 3-4 months, we're now up to 6 meetings a year. So it's every 2 months that we get together. And there are also video calls in between that of team meetings. So the Citizens Advice are very much on top of the current situation.
David, can I ask you to end there, because we're more or less out of time.
Certainly.
And there's just a chance of finishing in the next 30 seconds, so and then we'll run out of time. So I'll ask if anybody has anything they want to desperately add to their written reports. If not, note that the Poor Lands Trust charity has submitted audited accounts and to the council. And moving on, the town's...
Sorry, Chair. Sorry, Chair. I'm sure the clerk will tell us. We actually have to now stop. And
you do.
Well, if you'd let me finish the sentence, we would have finished.
Well, you've actually got 2 items that you haven't done yet, Chair. But
yes, and the first one, there is nothing to do, report.
The meeting is closed. You can't say that now. It's done. This meeting is closed. These are your rules. The meeting is now closed. That's it.
Okay.
Done. Thank you.
Meeting's closed. It's 10:30.